Hi, welcome to Authenticate 2022, the FIDO conference. You are joining the on-demand session, FIDO Journey in APAC, Success and Challenge. My name is Jun. I'm the APAC Market Development Director at FIDO Alliance. It is my honor to moderate this session, joined by the industry experts from Japan, India, and Korea. Why don't we kick off this session by inviting our panelist to introduce her or himself.
Hi, my name is Keiko Itakura, and I'm with Rakuten as Security Specialist and participating FIDO Alliance Leadership Group of the Japan Working Group.
Hi, my name is Dev Jyoti, and I lead the India FIDO Working Group. I'm also a director in Visa, and I lead a team which develops identity solutions to be used in payment authentication and authorization.
Hi, my name is Kian, and I'm working at SK Telecom, which is one of major MNOs in Korea. At SK Telecom, I'm wearing multiple hats: software engineer, security engineer, identity standard architect, and lastly, technical product manager. Before joining, I joined company including Line and Samsung Electronics as a software engineer. And recently, I'm interested in authentication and identity spaces.
Well, Itakura-san, DJ, and Kian, thank you so much for all your wonderful introductions. Now, just to give a little bit of time to our panelists to warm up, let me just lay out some numbers and some information and share what's happening in APAC generally. So let us look at these three different dimensions, key drivers of FIDO adoption and FIDO members in APAC, and then notable FIDO deployments in the region. So, recognitions by government and related agencies, especially the ones from like Korea, Taiwan, India, and Australia, and market demands are accelerating the acceptance of a FIDO authentication in the region. Yet, the threats that we are witnessing, especially around the OTP-based SMS attacks, are one of the biggest key driver of a FIDO adoptions in the region. We don't want to focus on one specific country or company. Yet, if you simply Google like SMS phishing attack or password hacking, whatever, you will see so many cases from Singapore, Korea, India, etc. And thanks to the acceptance of a FIDO in the market, the number of FIDO members with their registered addresses in APAC is increasing. So these are just a short list of the FIDO members in the region, regardless of their membership levels. What we want to emphasize here is that it covers about 42% of our overall membership. FIDO Alliance overall now has about 300 members as of this month. So again, thanks to our members' efforts, there are notable FIDO deployments in Japan, China, Korea, and ASEAN plus Australia and New Zealand. I've not spent too much time bragging about this, but rather give opportunity our panelists to cover this item. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the questions. So question number one, can you share how FIDO authentication is embraced in your organization or region? Can we start from Itakura-san at Rakuten?
So FIDO is being introduced in various industries in Japan, especially in the education industry. Attention of FIDO is increasing recently. One of the notable points of FIDO in Japan is the early introduction of UAF. NTT Docomo introduced it in May 2015. Since then, FIDO UAF has continued to be deployed in multiple financial institutions and enterprise environment. For FIDO 2, we also have several notable use cases. For example, Yahoo is the first service provider in the world to introduce FIDO 2 commercially. LINE also introduced FIDO 2 to its mobile payment app for the first time in the world. Because of such active FIDO introduction, Japanese companies are actively participating in discussion of the FIDO Alliance and working on issues in actual operation. This slide shows 3 examples. One is published account recovery white paper, which suggests to register additional authenticator. Secondly, creating test procedure for developer. As last example, we recently actively discussed about multi-device FIDO credential passkey and raised and reviewed FAQ for passkeys. So this is an issue we posted on the WebAuthn Git repository just today. In such a way, we are actively making proposal for FIDO authentication specification based on Japanese operations. And we are actively communicating with other countries' FIDO Alliance members, such as Korea and India. So we are helping each other. Let me briefly introduce Japan security situation. In Japan, Japan's government agency publish yearly based security threat trend. This year, they identified phishing attack with number 1 threat. And the number of attacks is increasing exponentially with each passing day. FIDO, which is resistant to phishing, is a hot technology for Japanese companies. Finally, let's talk about Japanese culture and implementation points. I made 4 points here. First, Japan has a strong culture of goodness and trust, and it still relies heavily on password. It is very important for us to improve security as a user-friendly mechanism that does not rely on human knowledge as much as possible. In addition, as a characteristic of systems in companies, Japanese systems are often individually optimized by multiple vendors. And security-related investment has not yet progressed compared to other investments such as disaster countermeasures. We need to unify this complicated system with a standard mechanism and agree with management on the necessity of doing so.
That is excellent, Itakura-san. Really appreciate it. So can we have DJ go next?
First of all, many thanks to Itakura for such a detailed presentation of how the FIDO is being adopted in Japan. In Visa, we have been on the forefront of adopting FIDO for payment authentication and payment authorization. We do see that with the use of FIDO compared to other technologies, we have a higher rate of online transaction approval. So basically, FIDO does 2 things for us. One, the fraud reduction, which helps us and the whole ecosystem around payment to be more secure and to keep the value within ourselves and not lose it to scamsters and fraudsters around the world. Second, it gives the issuers and the banks more confidence in approving a transaction which they are seeing from a third-party merchant for the first time. This is very much important in the sense that we are now seeing a lot of small and medium banks and merchants coming into the ecosystem who do not have the scale and the capacity to do a full-fledged risk prevention or customer authentication system. And Visa's platforms have been very much on the forefront to make sure that they are getting the level of risk solutions that they deserve. And overall, we are making the whole ecosystem more safe, secure, and user-friendly. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, DJ. Hyun.
Before diving into deep, let me introduce characteristics of Korean market. Comparing to other countries and regions, everything in Korea market is mobile first. Almost Korean citizens have been using mobile phone since the mobile phone was introduced about 20 years ago. And we are very comfortable to use mobile phone for our everyday life. So many people cannot live one day without mobile phone. So the internet business player, including us, SK Telecom, is highly concentrating on providing best mobile user experience across all the sectors. Second, users and business players are very fast to adopt new one. In the authentication space, Korea is one of the fast FIDO adopters. Most of financial services, even e-commerces, have been providing FIDO as one of authentication options to users. Finally, we all have a national ID card, and resident registration number is issued to all citizens, so that number is unique to the user. So the user identity is managed by government, and such identity is leveraged by many industries where the identity assurance is important. So in Korea, there are some notable ID proofing and authentication services. In this slide, I'm going to describe the PKI-based ID proofing and authentication services. Before that, with Korea, ID proofing and authentication is closely related and coupled. So from now, what I'm explaining is about both ID proofing and authentication. Since about 20 years ago, Korea government regulated a strong user identification when the user opens a bank account or do financial related activities. As I described before, many of services are provided via the internet. The online authentication got an attention a lot. So government mandated to use certificate-based ID proofing and authentication. So we have national PKI, and it was quite used long ago. The process is very simple. You prove your identity to national PKI system. Then you get certificate for your identity, and the private key for the certificate should be kept secure in some manner. There are a couple of types of certificate based on the security requirement levels. So if you visit some relying parties, if they need to identify or authenticate you, they request you to authenticate. Then you generate the digital signature and send that signature to the relying party. And then relying party verify the signature and certificate status. And it's worth to mention that in that signature and the certificate, there is a piece of information that uniquely identifies the user in the nationwide. And recently, there are some chances to issuing this kind of certificate by the private companies after verifying and certifying its infrastructure by accredited agency. As a user, we have now many options to use PKI-based ID proofing and authentication. So in other cases, especially MNOs, we strictly check the user identity and ID card when they become our subscriber, and we keep checking users' identity and their bank account or credit card for the subscription fees. This is why we can do ID proofing and authentication for the Korean citizen. Comparing to the PKI-based one, our services is very user-friendly, and anyone use it on the desktop, laptop, mobile phone, or even TV. If you have mobile phone number in Korea, you are eligible to use this ID proofing services. So with this strict identity checking, we can also provide authentication, ID proofing services to third party. So most of the services running in Korea, if they need to identify users, almost every service depend on our services. So the ID proofing and authentication process is something like this. So if you visit some relying party, and if they need identify or authenticate you, they redirect you to us, then you have two options. One is proving your identity with your SMS and your some personal information, or you can use some application which is called Pass. Then you can prove your identity with biometrics or a simple PIN. Then the authentication bridges come back to relying party by redirection. Then the relying party knows who you are. We SK Telecom are one of the big players in the authentication and ID proofing market in Korea. So I'm going to explain two of such services. First one is Pass. Pass is co-branded with three major MNOs in Korea. So if you are a subscriber of those MNOs, then you can use this app. The major features are ID proofing, which I covered before, and it is government licensed services, and authentication with PKI based on digital signature. You can authenticate or digitally sign some document through these services. And you can store your driver's license in the app and prove your qualification and your age in an offline and online cases. Also, we are going to provide digital national ID card through this app, and you can manage your digital asset through our apps. The other one is Initial. Initial is a kind of DID-based digital wallet services, and its major feature is ID proofing and your ID card management, including student card and employee cards. Also, you can prove your qualifications, such as your certificate, through these services.
Thanks, Kyun. It's three of us. I mean, three of you come from very different sectors and services. So it's very colorful that how you introduce how FIDO is embraced in your region or in your country or in your service sector. That's great. Let's jump on to the next question, if I may. So Itakura-san, in your presentation, you talk about how each relying parties implemented FIDO. And perhaps, if you can you share like how some of the implementation tips, including the deployment steps and based on Japanese use case, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Johnson. So I would like to mention 3 points of implementation today. Firstly, UX and FAQ consideration. Users may not be familiar with passwordless. Also, differences in platform specification and behavior may confuse users. It is very important to have an easy-to-understand FAQ. One example from us, this is a screenshot of our site. We are focusing value of FIDO itself, like safe and easy to log in, not using words FIDO and WebAuthn themselves to understand easily. And we have considered a simple messaging and easy to understand button display to guide easily register. The UX guideline issued by FIDO Alliance last year may also be helpful. Second point is device and browser variation. As you know, FIDO is already supported by major browsers on multiple platforms. But the problem is specification and behavior are a bit different on each browser and platform. For example, this is pop-up message when user fail to log in due to they don't have credentials. Message text itself has differed depending on the browser. In addition, just say something went wrong, it might make user too confused because they cannot understand what need to do. So we can implement additional layer to show detailed message and add FAQ with screenshot to avoid confusion. Discoverable credential is another example where the behavior differs from platform to platform. However, Google has already announced that they will support this feature. Difference in specification are being discussed between platforms at the FIDO Alliance and WCC, and are being incorporated into standards. Japanese RPs are actively raising issues about what functions are necessary as standard function. In order to accommodate several patterns of devices like this, each pattern can be tested and the limitation and consideration can be listed. You can add this limit as a consumer FAQ or implement additional customer feature. The last point is the implementation considering the client use cases. Rakuten has many Rakuten has 70 services in 30 countries. So Rakuten operates multiple services and has multiple ID requirements. and system individually optimized by multiple vendors as a characteristic of Japan. So we need to consider several use cases. To work smoothly under such complicated requirement, executive support is necessary. We can organize steering committee and involve CTO, CISO, CMO, and promoted project as a company-wide project. We can also say how passwordless contribute to decreasing operation cost and incident handling costs, and so on. We can classify each service from various viewpoints, such as the effect of introduction and the ease of introduction to proceed horizontal expansion. And then we can track implementation status for each service with various viewpoints, such as service type, device type, login type, status, release timing. Additionally, before a public release, we did user trial with internal employees as a volunteer. It also helped to increase quality and user accessibility, considering business use case. As a summary, it is important for end user to have a passwordless experience by considering FAQs and UX and responding to difference in specification for each platform. Thinking advantage of passwordless with stakeholders and careful deployment in consideration of business use cases will help in unified ID management.
Thank you, Itakura-san. I really appreciate it. I think the lessons you have learned, the tips that you are sharing is so valuable. Really appreciate it. So for now, moving on to the another region, these implementation tips and the lessons learned are so great, but how about the activities that we do for educating the market? We do so much in India. As a chair, DJ put a lot of efforts on this. So DJ, can you briefly share like recent FIDO related activities that are taking place in India? Things like white paper, publishing white paper, and the developer challenge focusing India, please.
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure, June. As you know, June, India was initially very slow to get on the FIDO bandwagon, but we can see a lot of interest coming in the last few months over here. If I can talk about a few of them, we see increased participation from our financial industry, whether it be banks or even some of the wallets and other payment processors, who now are become very conscious about their consumer security and are looking to tie up with FIDO to provide better experience and higher level of security to their consumers. On the other side, we have seen the reflection of these activities in our FIDO India working group as well. Our member size has increased almost twice. We now have our first white paper that was published last week. And that paper has actually created a lot of buzz in the industry overall, whether it be with the retail or with the banking. We reached out to many of the industry pioneers over our social media and our connections to evangelize the concept of FIDO and the paper with them. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive. This gives us a lot of encouragement going forward that the work that the India Working Group has put in would become very valuable later to save the identity and security mechanism in India. The other very important thing that we are trying to organize is the FIDO India Developer Challenge. This June himself is actually leading this effort, and we have quite a good number of people participating in this in the developer challenge. The work that we have seen is also very innovative, and we believe the next wave of security innovation is going to come out of India, and FIDO Alliance would be at the forefront of innovating on the security front. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, DJ. That's great. Next one goes to Hyun at the SK Telecom. I know you're at one of the biggest MNO companies in Korea, and you have done a lot of work with the SMS based OTPs. So right now we're witnessing the phishing attacks sharply rising in APAC. So can you briefly share one of the recent examples describing why OTP SMS based MFA is no longer safe?
Some users of the one major cryptocurrency exchange companies in Korea are hacked by the attackers. Even his account is protected by 2FA. According to the result of the investigation, the user visits the fake website, which is hard to differentiate to the real one, and he inputs his ID and password to the fake website. And the hacker gets such information from the fake website, and he relays authentication requests to the real website. Since the user account is protected by SMS authentication, additionally, the real site sends a one-time code to the number of the user. Then the user inputs the code to the fake website, and like just before, the attacker relaying ID and password and that OTP to the real site. Then real site verifies the code, which is valid. Through this process, hackers get authenticated and hijack the user account and send the cryptocurrency to some addresses. So even there are a couple of additional layers to protect user account, we can see that not all 2FA cannot phishing attack proof. That's the reason why SK Telecom is interested in phishing resistant authentication, especially WebAuthn and FIDO. Thanks.
Thanks, Kian. Really appreciate it. It seems like you have done a lot of investigations on this, and love to see that SK Telecom is expanding its reach out to the WebAuthn and perhaps some other FIDO's new technologies. So that's great, guys. Our last question, but not least, the question that we have here. So what else would you like to share with the audience today? DJ, how about you first?
Well, absolutely. So as I said, we are very much excited with the potential of FIDO, and there is quite a good amount of innovation that is happening around how we can effectively use FIDO in multiple payment situations. One of the things that we are actively looking at is, instead of using FIDO to authenticate single payment or push payments, how we can actually use FIDO to authenticate multi-party payments together. For example, like you have a list of your bills, and currently you probably, if you go for authentication, you probably have to authenticate each one of them individually, which might become very tedious if you have multiple credit cards, multiple phone numbers, or other things, utilities to be paid. We are looking to actually, we are on the process of getting procuring a patent on a very innovative concept that we are developing, which allows us to use FIDO authentication to authenticate all of these payments together without compromising on either the user experience or the security aspect that makes FIDO the #1 choice for our users.
That's exciting to hear, DJ. Love to see those papers available to the public very soon, and maybe we can prepare a separate session for this, not just India Working Group, but throughout the other Authenticate session, whatever.
Absolutely, so, we're looking forward to it.
Great. Itakura-san, Kyun, anything else you like to build upon or share? Or last thoughts, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, in summary, like other countries, FIDO adoption in Asia is very strong. And this year's Passkey news was so epoch-making and addressed many challenges to go truly passwordless. We are also actively discussing about binding topic recently. And I look forward to continuing to work with you to discuss how safe and convenient Authenticate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Takura-san. Nice to hear those kind of new activities coming up from Japan. Kyun, any last words or thoughts or some of the innovative work that you are doing right now?
So maybe actually, as a service provider, when we try to provide some strong authentication to the user, we need to concentrate on the user experience. And as I mentioned before, almost Korean business companies are focusing on mobile first. So I think in case of Korea, when we adapt FIDO for the first time, especially UAF, there are some couple of way to customize user experience to optimize their experience. But in case of FIDO2 or WebAuthn, there is some limitation to for us to customize user experiences. So I think for adoption, such challenges should be solved from the community. So I think it is better to discuss a lot, especially for user experience, without sacrificing any security. So I think we need to keep concentrating and keep working to provide better user experience. Thanks.
That's great, Kyun. Balancing, right? Balancing between the security and usability is always important, and I really appreciate that point. So that's pretty much it for this session. If you think about it, compared to other Authenticate session, this is very different, right? Most of other sessions are very much focused on the North America, right? But we bring in kimchi, we bring in curry, we bring in sushi flavor, right? On top of everything else. So I think it's the very fantastic session that we all put together. So really appreciate your time and the efforts as a panelist. And we also like to give a huge thanks to our audience who are tuning in today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the Authenticate 2022, the FIDO conference. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, June, for organizing this.
Thank you.